my 26-year-old transmission won't shift into any gear. But let me show you something I figured out to maybe get me out of this situation. Meow.
Now, I currently have a 1999 Isuzu Trooper, but this should work on any 4L30E vehicle. Trooper, Rodeo, Honda Passport, maybe even some Cadillacs. Any vehicle that has a 4L30E, this method should work. And I recommend this method because it takes the computer out of the equation, and if your solenoids aren't working, if your bands are burnt up, or if your gears are burnt up, this will allow you to physically, manually move your shifting lever in and out of the correct gear. Okay, so let me go ahead and explain what you can do here. You can disconnect the transmission harness connector that allows the computer to talk to the transmission, and that will allow you to put the transmission into a manual mode, allowing you to shift into a gear that is not slipping and allow you to drive the vehicle again. There are two harness connectors on this transmission, so it's important you know which one to disconnect. There's one near the front and one near the back. You're wanting to disconnect the one near the back that's next to the safety neutral switch. Don't disconnect the safety neutral switch, but yeah, it's the one right here on the back. So we're disconnecting the 4-pin electrical connector that's here on the back side of the transmission.
Alright, let me go ahead and show you this wiring harness now. The wiring harness is located on the driver's side of the transmission. The transmission bolts up about right there where the bell housing goes, and then the transmission connector is about right there in that area. Right about there. So you'll want to make sure that you do this with the engine nice and cool. Make sure you've had it sitting for a while, because the catalytic converter is right here next to it. Now this right here is your neutral safety switch, and you can see mine's dripping a little bit of transmission fluid because the connector where the neutral safety switch connects to the transmission right there has a O-ring or something that's actually leaking, and it's actually damaged the neutral safety switch because it's getting fluid in it and causing it to malfunction. So I'll have to be replacing that as well. So let's see how well you can see it in here. But don't confuse the neutral safety switch. That's not the harness connector. The harness connector, and I'll show you a chart to make it a little easier, but the harness connector will be located right there on the top side of here. So this can get really hot, so you want to make sure that when you're doing this, you've given the vehicle adequate time to cool down. So unfortunately I can't fit my camera in there to actually show it to you, but you can reach up in there, and on the left side towards the front of the vehicle there's a little clip. You can pinch that clip and pop it up to disconnect it. Now I don't pull the connector all the way out to where it's hanging to where you can get damaged, because you don't want the connector to get damaged from the heat, and you don't want dirt or debris to get into the connector connection space. So I pop it up enough to where it's not making contact and it's out, but it's still sitting on the top of the connector. So now with that disconnected, let me go ahead and show you up top.
And if you can't completely fit your hand in there, you can get a flathead screwdriver to kind of help you reach up in there and pop the plastic connector off and slide the connector up. I have kind of fat hands, so they just barely fit up in between the catalytic converter and the transmission pan. So whatever you can do to kind of make it easier to reach up in there. I know some people can reach over the exhaust and kind of reach it from the top side. I think that's a little bit more difficult, but whatever it takes. So try not to pay too much attention to the way my lights jump around here. Like I was saying, that's the neutral safety switch is malfunctioning from that leak. So, but it doesn't matter because this is just the display of what it's telling you it's in gear. The computer still has full control of what's going on here. So as you would normally switch into drive, it's in drive, don't worry about that. And you try to drive and you can tell I'm starting to make a little bit of motion here, but that's slipping. If you watch the RPMs, I gotta jump all the way up to about 4th gear before we start getting any movement out of that. So L on the shifter is 1st gear, which my 1st gear is burnt up. 2nd on the shifter becomes 3rd gear. 3rd gear becomes 4th gear, and the D is just a copy of 4th gear. So these two right here are the same. Neutral, reverse, or normal. Park is normal. So let me show you the difference now, taking off in 2nd gear as opposed to when we were taking off before. And let me show you just how fast we get up to speed here. It's a big difference. Sorry, let me catch that exposure. All right. Again, from a complete stop. Much more of a drivable experience than it was before. Alright, so let me explain what we've basically just done. So now that the transmission harness is disconnected, it's basically in what's called a manual mode. It disables the shifting solenoids inside the transmission because now the computer cannot talk to the transmission to tell it when to shift. So the only way to get it to shift now is by shifting it manually yourself. So L on the shifter, which is 1st gear, is still 1st gear. My 1st gear is completely burnt up. So we shift to 2nd gear. So for some reason in this configuration, it completely skips 2nd gear, and 2nd gear on your shifting lever becomes 3rd gear. So when I shift to 2nd gear on my shifting lever, I'm actually going into 3rd gear and I'm taking off and driving in 3rd gear. Once I'm up to about 3,000 RPMs, start to get up to 50 miles an hour on the highway, I will then shift into 3rd on the shifter which is technically fourth gear, which is also technically my overdrive. So my overdrive gear. So once you're on the highway, you kind of just let off the gas a little bit and you go from the 2 to the 3, which is going from third gear to fourth gear. I know it's confusing, but once you're doing it, it makes sense. I feel like this is something that can really get you out of a jam, like especially if you're stranded because your transmission's completely given out and you can't shift it into a gear to get you going. Even if you just had to limp home and all your gears were gone and you just needed to get into reverse or into fourth gear just to move the vehicle a little bit because your computer's not letting you move at all, this is a great way to get around that. So I don't recommend doing this. I feel like it puts a lot of extra strain and torque on the engine and on the transmission. I plan to have this transmission rebuilt pretty soon and have the gearing fixed and replaced. That being said, because of financial reasons, I've been driving it like this for about 3,000 miles now and haven't noticed anything weird going on. My vehicle's loud because I have an exhaust leak. That's something else I need to fix soon. First, we'll start with those tires.